Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios. Today we'll be talking about this Indian anti-Pakistan propaganda. I mean, if you start looking into the details, you will not only find the Disinfolabs, you will find a proper setup, a system which is not only operated in India but in at least 150 plus countries. So you can well imagine the kind of propaganda campaign is against Pakistan, to malign Pakistan, to defame Pakistan, primarily to show the world that Pakistan is a terrorist country, it's a terrorist nation, and all the wrongdoings perhaps are happening in Pakistan. And whatever happens in India, without any information, without any consultation, their media and their state would totally target Pakistan. I'll just give you one example, the recent one. A few days ago, there was a story that there was this drone, and don't think that was a proper American drone or Israeli drone, perhaps it was a small drone operated, and that in fact dropped some sort of, perhaps it was C4 or whatever kind of an explosive was that, and it created a crater there. So once the crater was there, so they started saying that, well, this is in fact a game of China and Pakistan to attack the Jammu Air Force Base, and thank God there was no reports of casualties or fatalities for that matter, and all the jets and the SS they had there, they're all safe. So without even a single I would say consultation with any intelligence agency or otherwise, their media straight away went after Pakistan. And this is not the first time. You talk about the early 90s attack on the parliament in India and Delhi. Straight away they blamed Pakistan. You talk about 26/11 Mumbai attack. They straight away blamed Pakistan, made documentaries on that, made movies on that. I mean, this is the kind of advertising quality they have. That's how they operate. Obviously, they are inspired by Bollywood, and this is exactly what happens. You talk about any other issue, whether you talk about any attack, a local attack by their local people, they would still blame Pakistan for that, and they'll somehow or the other connect it with our intelligence agencies or with the military in particular, because that was the word they were using. So this is not the first time. The fake media should be exposed. It has been exposed. If you remember, during the time when the Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan, they were protesting, I would say at least 80% of the tweets which were generated were from India. Most of the stories that were coming out and fake visuals were also shown, and they blamed Pakistan for that. So you can well imagine it is a very organized setup and a system they have, perhaps under the wings of RAW, and that is how they are functioning out there. But before wasting any more time, I would like you to quickly introduce you to our guests. We have with us in our studio on my right is Yasir Janjua Sahab, Senior Analyst. Janjua Sahab, pleasure to have you on the show, sir. Thank you so much for your time. And on Skype, we have with us Ambassador Dr. Jamil Khan, who is joining us from UK. Ambassador Sahab, what a pleasure to have you, sir, in the show. Thank you so much for your time. And we also have with us Dr. Shahid Qureshi Sahab, who is a Senior Analyst from the London Post. Thank you so much, Shahid Sahab, for your time also, sir. Now, sir, this is not the first time that we are doing a show on this particular issue, sir. But before we start, let me show you a small package that the production team has prepared, sir, and then we'll start our conversation.
Although India always suffers from an amnestic approach when it comes to practical pursuance of the constitutional laws and domestic as well as regional policies, but since the ultra-right BJP's Narendra Modi has taken the office of the Prime Minister of India, this non-congruency touched new heights. Despite facing a dreadful health emergency and being the second most COVID-19 affected country in the world, India, rather than focusing on countering this grave situation, is still stabbing its own neighborhood-first policy, which was supposed to strengthen the regionalism by pursuing the propaganda tactics against Pakistan. To pursue these tactics, India recently blamed Pakistan in the United Nations and alarmed the international community for the possible use of weaponized drones for terrorist activities in India. Most recently, the anti-Pakistan propaganda by India was exposed when India tried to politically manipulate the FATF, and India's security advisor Ajit Doval tried to defame Pakistan in Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Minister for Information and Broadcasting Fawad Chaudhary also expressed his concerns about these propaganda tactics by India and told that during the recent protests by Tehreek-e-Labbaik Pakistan, more than 300,000 tweets were originated from the Indian city of Ahmedabad within 3.5 minutes. He also added that recently an Infolab was exposed through which 845 fake websites were created which were promoting sub-nationalism in Balochistan and questioning the Kashmiri struggle. Ironically, when India was blabbering over possible future drone terrorism by Pakistan in the United Nations, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres was expressing his concern over the grave violations against children in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir.
Interestingly, since we talk about a couple of very important areas, Janjua Saab, this anti-Pakistan campaign and this particular propaganda is not something that is, that is new. It has been happening, and interestingly, around 2005, 6 and 7, it was even reported then, but nothing much was done to sort of, show your retaliation towards that. Just look at the number, over 300,000 tweets generated in a few minutes from one city, anti-Pakistan. Now, this is the magnitude of the issue. You talk about India, you go to the Western world, so you travel and you'll see that most of the people, they think what India is showing through Bollywood otherwise. A movie where they'll show Ferraris and Anil Kapoor and, and that would be a part of Mission Impossible for that matter. Whenever you want to show some computer scientists or doctors, they would always show the Indians. But whenever you talk about a country that is posing some sort of a threat in a movie even, either it would be Korea or it is going to be, for that matter, Pakistan, Afghanistan, all these countries perhaps which are not anti-USA, but USA doesn't get along very well with them. That's how the mindset is changed. Forget about what newspapers do or what the news programs, that is a separate chapter. I'm just going to ask you this question, that what a campaign, hats off to them. Because if their idea is to malign Pakistan, sir, they're doing it, and they're doing it well. We have always had this reactive approach rather than the proactive approach, sir. We should be telling the world the truth. The world should not be listening to the lies of the Indians. Your take, sir.
Faisal, we have to face the realities. Indian defense budget is $57 billion. The annual increase in the Indian defense budget is actually more than Pakistan's 1 year's budget, 1 year's defense budget. The increase in their defense budget every year is more than Pakistan's defense budget. As the information minister was also saying today, well, I was hearing that Pakistan's the external publicity wing, the yearly budget is only 45 million rupees. And in comparison, India has 21 billion. So what are we talking about? Now these 300,000 tweets in 3.5 minutes that you're talking about, it is someone's responsibility in the Ministry of Information or Ministry of Foreign Affairs to reach out to Twitter, because these are those bots. Most of them, majority of them are fake, and they are computer generated tweets, because India is trying to coerce the international opinion. But however, now you talked about Ajit Doval, what he did in SCO, and we know what Indians tried to do in FATF review meeting in a few days ago.
Yep.
All these efforts of Indians, they've been trying that. They can make very good Bollywood movies. They can make the very good replicas of Mission Impossible. But when it comes to fighting on the ground, they've never been able to fight us. In 1971, what they're very proud of, they never fought and won the war. It was through Mukti Bahani and those agents that they fought the war. They can't fight a conventional war. And now even they know it. What happened with their plane, you know exactly what was about to happen to them if Pakistani airplanes would have hit their brigade headquarters where the Indian Army chief was sitting,
yes.
They would have gone down the drain. Pakistan exercised restraint. Well, what you're now saying is, yes, we do lack that part where we are not as proactive as them. One, lack of resources. Two, the population size is completely different. So they have got a huge youth force and their political rhetoric, their whole political machinery runs around the anti-Pakistan element. So anybody who wants to win an election, there is no other agenda in their elections, no development agenda.
Anti-Pakistan.
It is only the anti-Pakistan rhetoric which wins the political party, the elections. So when a country is so obsessed with an enemy that to 1/10 of the size, so they will do everything they are doing. Their tweets are going to Afghanistan and then they're coming from there, and as you know, the Infolab, 845 websites, because they only believe in these intrigues. They know it, they cannot fight a conventional war.
But these are the modern techniques of the warfare, sir. You're talking about the propaganda war. You're talking about the 5th generation warfare.
Right.
Absolutely.
So when we've done many programs on this with you before even, Faisal, and I'm sorry to say, except for PTV, you hardly see any other private channel in Pakistan picking up this topic, picking up this subject and taking the Indians head on.
So national interest versus the ratings and money?
Ratings and money, there you go. So it's our national interest and the national narrative that has to be promoted. And that is where we are lacking. Unfortunately, I have to say, sitting on the PTV, the viewership of PTV ever since the private media channels have come in has reduced. Before there was no choice. We all were watching, we grew up watching PTV. Now, however, these private channels with ratings and everything, they have taken over PTV in a way. So our new generation is watching them. So it is the responsibility of the Information Ministry also to tell them this is a national duty, that you promote the national narrative on your channels.
And plus the youth is also using all these modern applications, sir. When we were growing up, there was no concept of an internet.
Right.
Now every other kid has a gadget and he is connected. You just Google anything and everything, and the kind of information they want you to see, that will be shown to you.
And the propaganda the Indians are doing, and we are falling into their hands sometimes. In the last few days, you must have seen those fake news on WhatsApp. I don't even want to talk about them because then I'll be promoting them, so I'd rather not talk about them. This is how the Indians are doing it. They throw it into our hands and then we start circulating them right, left and center without even knowing, without verifying. And
whether they're authentic or not.
This is why this 5th generation warfare is so dangerous, that it corrupts the minds of people. And the worst part is, if it infiltrates into our troops, it is going to reduce the will to fight. And that is what we don't want to, and that is what the army chief has been saying and the military leadership has been saying, that we have to be careful. This 5th generation warfare that the Indians are using, because they know they can't fight a conventional war, they're resorting to this. They want to reduce our will to fight. And that's why they spread the news.
I still remember, let me take this point to Ambassador Jamil Saab. Ambassador Saab, I still remember Indira Gandhi when she was the Prime Minister, and she gave a statement at that time. Perhaps I might not be having the right words, what she used, but what she meant was that through media we will make sure that Pakistan is taken over without firing a single bullet. And either through music or through movies or through dramas or through campaigns, this is exactly what has happened. I mean, I'm not in support of the idea that you should block the Indian channels. What I'm saying is that increase the content from your side. I mean, let's show the world the true picture of Pakistan. Everybody is not throwing acids on the face of women and getting the Oscar awards, or perhaps similar, because you know the West is also going to pick up the same story, which is going to malign Pakistan, and at the end of the day, whether you win an Oscar or not, but the subject is the actual concern to me. Nobody talks about what's going on in Kashmir. Let's make a movie and get an Oscar, and I'll see how you end up getting an Oscar. Jamil Saab.
We have discussed so many points in this discussion. We have really very cogent and pertinent points which could be pitched in the world, which could be disseminated around the world. That one is what Secretary General has said in regard to the children just yesterday, and what report Secretary General of the United Nations have presented in the Security Council for debate. about what they are doing, the atrocities of the children and everyone in Kashmir. So it's just boiled down about the propaganda. What you were just discussing a little while ago. The propaganda, they have been checked by no one, no less entity than the European Union. And European Union had started investigating. They have concluded that Indians have uh, stolen the seized details of the INGOs, international NGOs, and they started using their account by just making duplicate and fake accounts. And they were not one, they were in thousands. And secondly, the website, which you have already mentioned, 145 websites operating throughout the Europe and other countries from rather 119 countries, as the European report says, but it's much higher. So all these things are there. Now, the question, what you were discussing with Mr. Janjua also, is what are the countermeasures to let the world know that what is right and what is fake and what is the correct thing. Now, there we probably have to really act more, and we have to use these documents. And this is a very pertinent and a very logical document which European Union has produced, and the document even more heavier document, an important and significant document are those two reports which has recently been published by the Human Rights Commission, and the commissioner who was presenting in front of the press was having tears on his cheeks while he was presenting. And what we've been discussing in so many programs here in PT World and other channels about the atrocities and about what the Indians have done in the Kashmir and the kind of heights they have, and the height they have created for all the problems in Kashmir, and they have let the hell loose on the Kashmiri people. So all those things are given in these two reports. Just to give a very quick summary of what are the figures which has been mentioned, and I can give you the approximate figures of it. Total killing is over 100,000. Custodian killing in those reports, what has been mentioned is over about 8,000 people. Civilian arrested over 200,000, and women widowed 30,000, over 30,000. Children orphaned, they're about 150,000. So on and so forth. There are so many women molested. There are about more than 20,000. So all these figures are there in those two documents I just mentioned. Those two documents and well articulated document, legal document under the international law published, that should be made best use of it. All what we discuss on our television channel, mostly in Urdu, which is not comprehended by the world audience, who are more important, and therefore countering Indian propaganda becomes slightly uphill task because we do not have those means and tools, and we are not really making real serious efforts. Of course, the constraints of budget and constraints of other things are there, but within the given resources also, there are a lot many things we can do. So leaving this point over here, now let's come back on the how India is utilizing this all these websites and all these. You are fully aware what European Union had said about the propaganda, the Indian Chronicles. So that is quite well alive now. It is in the minds of, it's fresh in the minds of the European and other people. We should discuss it on our television, on social media, and of course all the tools what we have, so that people should have the stories with the documented facts and figures. That is one. And second, what stops us telling the entire world, and that's already contained in these reports, telling the entire world that India, after implementing 370 and 35, after abrogating 370 and Article 35 of their constitution, what are their intentions? And all these propaganda, what they are doing to undermine the realistic thoughts which Pakistan is trying to propel at various international forums, and they are trying to just divert that deflect that by using these propaganda tools. And therefore, they are now, they have settled more than 1.5 million people from outside Kashmir, which is against the international law, and under the Geneva Convention, Article 49, and that clearly stipulates that any disputed territory can
All right.
the occupying territory cannot really bring people from outside. So all those things are there, and they are just trying now to change the demography. And now they would ask, they might as well go to the Security Council and say, okay, now we are ready for the Security Council Resolution 47, which says that, okay, go for the plebiscite. So
Exactly.
we have to comprehend,
I totally agree with you, sir.
Really.
Exactly. This is what we have been fearing. This is what I've been talking about. India has been buying time. They are still buying time. And till the time they actually see that this is the right time for them for the plebiscite. And then obviously we all know, since the demographics have been changed to an extent, that it could give the desired results for them. But coming to you now, Dr. Shahid Qureshi Saab, one important area, since you live abroad and you're also connected to the London Post. Talking about the diaspora, sir, obviously what the Indians are doing, we are not doing anything at that level, except for a very few people. I'm just going to give you a few examples, sir. Talking about the two biggest television channels, one is CNN, one is BBC. Sir, you switch on those channels and you'll see that the Indians, they have bought time, whether you talk about their tourism, you talk about their cooking, you talk about the archaeology side, historical sites. So the way they promote India, the shining India, India on a rise, India on a move, that idea sells, and it does. Whereas when you talk about Pakistan, sir, I was in Bay Area in California, used to talk to people who were pretty educated and well aware. They all thought that Pakistan is more or less like Afghanistan, because they had no clue. When I used to show them pictures, and they would be like, oh. So what I'm saying is that let's give the devil his due. What Indians have done, they have damaged. Let's accept. One should always know the reality. And what we have done, I think we have done nothing, always had a very reactionary approach, that reactive approach. Sir, it doesn't work like that. Your take.
Well, thank you very much for your very long question. And I always say to my students who I teach digital diplomacy and psychological warfare in Uzbekistan and China and Kazakhstan, you need to be very specific. I always believe in SMART goals: specific, measurable, realistic, and achievable, and timed. Problem with Pakistani politicians and academics is they tell long stories and this and that. You need to be crisp, short, and sharp. And people are in the digital media world. The kids don't have time to read. My daughter wrote to me, IDK, and I said, "What is IDK?" She said, "I don't know."
Yeah.
So the kids have moved on from our Victorian English and Victorian style of grammar, etc. Coming back to the, because this is the area which I work. We talk about disease, what the Indians are doing. We know what the Indians are doing. And I can tell you what's going to happen to India. I wrote an article last year that the friendship with the United States and Israel and France is going to lead to the inevitable disintegration of India. The reason being is they planted or they supported Modi. Modi is a character which is compared as someone else in our neighboring country who had similar religious agenda. He was brought in from abroad, and he replaced a very modern pro-West leader, a king of Iran, and they replaced him with a France-based religious scholar. And I wrote this article last year, and when it says that the Aspen Institute in Italy what they says this, that they very quickly, I'll just read it to you. In a 1981 book, Hostage to Khomeini, journalist Robert Diffis says that the Club of Rome, the Aspen Institute, and the other lead think tanks conspired to take out Shah and undo his modernization plan for Iran, which they saw as a threat to their power and control over the region. The mullahs did not come to the rule in Iran on the basis of their own power. They were placed in power by the men over more evil than they. Now, if you bring it to India, before Modi, it was a shining India. After Modi, the picture we see of India today is exactly the same which I said in 2006 to the Indian ambassador in London, Ambassador Ranindra Sen. And I explained to his policy, the topic was India in the 21st century superpower. And I said, Your Excellency, you had three wars with Pakistan, you had a war with China, you had a war with Bangladesh, border disputes, you have a problem with Bhutan, you have a problem with Nepal, you have a problem with all the countries. All your neighbors are not happy with you. The only country you are having good relations is Mauritius. And his answer was, in the London School of Economics was, this is not a fair question. Now, if we bring it to the state of India as a state which is a viable, which can exist for a long time, that is not going to happen. Because number one, there is no religious tolerance. They demolished Babri Mosque, Masjid, they killed Muslims in huge number, which is their citizens. They demolished, bombed, invaded Golden Temple. They killed thousands and thousands of Sikhs. They're their own citizens. They killed, burned Christian churches. They're their own citizens. So India fulfilled all the criteria to have the United Nations Security Council sanctions, which they put against Saddam Hussein. So all this information is available to me. I've just narrated to you. Now, what Modi did to India was that he actually escalated that speed, which is leading towards the disintegration of India. When the Indian Air Force attacked on Pakistani Kashmir, and Pakistan responded, of course. A few days later, we had a very interesting article in New York Times. And the New York Times article says that 68% of the Indian Army equipment is officially vintage. When you say vintage, it means it's a scrap. 68% of a military equipment is vintage, and they are thinking of going to fight with China with the latest weapons and with the latest technology. Now, who is leading India into this war between Pakistan and with China? France. France is very active. France want to they sell Rafale. Do you think the 30 odd Rafale is going to protect the whole of India? It's so big country. Do you think any other Western countries are going to come and protect India? No, the answer is no. What they want is, and I think the Chinese and some sane people in India understand that the current war at the moment going on in the world is not the war between the Islam and the war on terror against Islam or the modernizing. It's a real war between the colonials and the people who were colonized in the past. Japan was the country which colonized China. They can't tolerate China becoming such a powerful country. And the Chinese are sitting with the Americans and Australians and Indians against China. The Japanese, for example. We see the same situation in India and Pakistan. Pakistan, we see a lot of coconuts. Coconuts meaning that it's a term used for the people who are black from outside and the white from inside. So the real problem is coconuts. If we look at the Indian channels, they all speak English, which majority of the Indians don't understand. This is their Bollywood language. If you look at Pakistani elite, Pakistani channels, they also do the same, half English, half Urdu. They have some kind of inferiority complex. Three neighbors of Pakistan, China, Iran, and Afghanistan, they teach their students in their own local language. They do not have any inferiority complex. Afghanistan example is the best textbook example in the world. The half-educated, uneducated, less modernized people has beaten the most sophisticated superpower with latest weaponry in the world. Those guys go to Doha, Qatar in their shalwar kameez with a turban on, and they meet Pompeo, the most powerful man, former director of CIA, who's holding his hands together and he's meeting with the Taliban commander.
Yeah.
What it boils down to is that the national integrity, the national spirit. I know we have lack of resources. There will always be. The problem is that where are your
But
priorities?
they shouldn't be, sir. That's the thing, because we understand now we need to prioritize. For example, we should know how to spend the money wisely. That is a very important point. Now, I'll get back to you, sir, on that. But Janjua Saab, one important area. I mean, yes, sir, there is a problem. And every problem has a solution or a remedy for that matter. You need to evaluate the problem, number one. Need to look into it, generate few alternatives, and then you need to place the best one. If doesn't work, contingency, and that's how management is moving forward. Now, when you talk about Pakistan, sir, there are so many think tanks, and perhaps they are talking about various very important issues, and they're writing, and you know, they're holding seminars, and they're conducting so many workshops as well. But again, look at the size of India. Look at the kind of mindset they have, as if they have mastered the technique, sir. Don't you think this is the time? You know, our Prime Minister talks about the 5th generation warfare. The President, you know, talks about that. The Chief of Army Staff is always telling us about that. But the point is, sir, how to counter India. India is a big country. India has more money. India has more influence. Obviously, if Tata's investments can generate more than 7,000-8,000 jobs in UK, why would they look towards Pakistan for that? But I mean, these are all realities, sir. You are talking about this much of investment and one person can do this much. So obviously the weightage is different. Yes, we do understand how to sort of talk about the Kashmir issue or other issues as well, or a Dalit or otherwise. Sir, during the Second World War, even during the First World War, the Germans in fact had this ministry that was called the propaganda ministry. Actually, the Ministry of Information is supposed to be the propaganda ministry, but obviously the nature has changed. Yeah. Don't you think, sir, this is the time there should be a proper plan, a proper person should be at the top with an idea what to do and what not to do? You talk about sports, India is not ready to play cricket with you. You talk about any other, some Indians are not ready, they don't even invite you for that purpose. Wherever they get a platform, whether it's SCO or United Nations, they always malign Pakistan. I mean, you need to have a counter strategy. Unfortunately, it seems either the links are missing or we are not interested.
Look, we have the infrastructure and the apparatus, like we have the external publicity wing whose main primary role is this. It has not been properly utilized or used, or it's been politics or bureaucratic laziness, you might say. But we had the infrastructure, we could use it. We had all the right ingredients. However, what we need to do is, instead of being defensive, we have to be on the offensive. Rather than defending things in response to the tweets India generates, as Dr. Shahid Qureshi was also saying, how many of us know what just Dr. Shahid Qureshi just said, that 68% of Indian equipment is vintage.
More than 2/3.
Now I'll tell you what, only 3 days ago or 4 days ago, the news was, obviously for those who are taking interest, I know about it, and I'm sure everybody else among the panelists and a couple of other people who take interest in these things, Malaysia wants to buy light combat aircraft. Yeah. The Indian Tejas has been badly rejected by the Malaysians. They don't even call it a light combat aircraft. Pakistan's JF-17 Thunder has not only been shortlisted, it is the finalist now. Now, these are the kind of news we have to promote. Where was the private media? They were only building their ratings.
Sir, so the only issue that the private media unfortunately is discussing is about the domestic politics.
Yes.
Mia Saab versus Nawaz Sharif versus
this is where the external
Zardari
publicity
versus
wing,
the Prime Minister.
The external publicity wing needs to wake up and do all this. There
Where
has
is
to be
this
a cohesive
external publicity wing? So is it in the Foreign Affairs Ministry?
No,
Is
it's
it
under the it's under the Ministry of Information, and there is all the ingredients available. We just have to become proactive and start holding the bull by the horn.
Sir, we have heard that certain cells were created, I mean, to malign the other political party. For example, Mariam Nawaz, instead of doing some sort of, a goodwill gesture for Pakistan,
we know it in the
went
past
after the
governments.
Prime
We know it in
Minister.
the past governments, the Information Ministry was used as
For
a
their
tool
personal gains.
because the advertisements and everything else, they were going to those newspapers and TV channels
The
which were
favorite ones.
promoting the governments. But there is seriously there is a platform available which can be used and which can tell the national narrative to the different channels, not in a coercive way so that the media comes out and say, look, we are being told what to say and what not to say. We don't want to do that. However, they need to realize that we also have to play the game the Indians are playing. They've got channels which have dedicated programs on Pakistan. How many channels in Pakistan has a dedicated, not even one. I don't know of one program on the entire private channels which talks about India all the time. They have dedicated channels. Republic TV only does this thing. It could be a whatever it is, but that is
Times
what they're
Now,
supposed to
India
do.
Now, I mean, you name it. India Today, yeah?
So why can't we do that? We do that as well, or we can do that as well. So it's the case of external affairs, the external publicity wing, getting its house in order, and I am very positive.
Exposing India and promoting Pakistan. That should be the agenda.
Current, not that I'm trying to promote him, but I think the current information minister is very dynamic. I've personally met him and I know him. He's doing the great job of promoting Pakistan's cause, and his speech today in the assembly or yesterday was just in the right direction to tell the people what Indians are doing and what we should be doing to corner them. It's the case of educating the masses. Look, although I'm saying external publicity wing will do it, but the question is, this information has to go out to the people, to the youth, and educate people to start using Twitter for that matter. Instead of using TikTok and all those nonsense things, we use the media the way it should be used. And there's no different. I mean, I can tell you
I'll give you one more example. I went to India in 2017 and I met the nephew of one of their senior ministers, Mani Shankar Iyer's nephew. His name was Vidya Shankar Iyer. He was one of the best ace anchors in India. IBN, CNN, collaborations. That's how things work out, sir. When your actors are working in their stories and one of the story went against India, she was criticized. I'm talking about one of the top-notch actress, former Miss World also, Priyanka Chopra. I'm saying that is the kind of eye they are keeping on things, sir, that this could result into this and people might think this way. And you know what we are up to. We are maligning each other. That's the problem. Sir, because since I'm running out of time, let me put this question to Ambassador. Ambassador, now, the way forward. Now, we have talked about it. Yes, we do have a setup in the Ministry of Information. I'm not saying that we need to malign. We need to actually expose, tell the world the reality, what's going on in the Indian occupied Kashmir or what's going on in other parts. There are human rights violations. People are dying left, right, and center. And whatever is happening to Pakistan is being done by the Indians using the Afghan soil and otherwise. That is, they have mastered the art of fifth generation warfare. Let's be more productive now. Let's counter them effectively. Let's create certain centers that need to be advised to look after the affairs of Pakistan, promote Pakistan. Let the world know what real Pakistan is. Ambassador
All right,
Jamil.
yeah, that's right. I would say that we need an integrated approach. An integrated approach, whether it's the External Affairs Ministry, Foreign Ministry, it's our Information Ministry, all our departments and ministries, they have their role to play. And once it comes down to counter the propaganda, once it's come down to project those solid evidences which has emerged through the international platforms, like as I was saying in the last segment, through the Human Rights Commission, or what the Secretary General has said just yesterday. So all those things are known to be a solid evidence which has been carved out, which has been created through reports, which has its international value, international importance. So those things, bearing those things in mind, and what we are discussing here, we need to have a package, and that package has to be done through integrated efforts, not only within the ministries and within Pakistan, but all the missions of Pakistan have to carry it forward through the traditional diplomacy, through the public diplomacy, and our UN representative in UN needs to really take it up at the multilateral level, and then only we will have an integrated results of what we are discussing over here. So the bottom line is, have we been able to synthesize, or have we been able to utilize those solid, measurable evidence created by international organization, and have been able to pursue Red Cross? Have we been able to pursue the Human Rights Council? Because diplomacy, unless you have the consistency, you will not be able to press upon your point, and you will not be able to get the right result. SCO, of course, we have done some efforts in that. OIC, the kind of approach OIC has, we understand that, but still there is a room for working more. Security Council, General Assembly, Dr. Shahid Qureshi was just mentioning that yes, we can have the sanction imposed on on India based on all these evidence what I'm just mentioning, and probably he also had in his mind that. So if we need to do that, then there are tools available. Are we utilizing those tools? And those tools could only be utilized if we have our very well coordinated efforts for countering what India
Absolutely,
is doing,
sir.
and
Totally
how
agreed with
India
you. Absolutely, spot on. Sir, last couple of minutes for you, sir. And Qureshi Saab, just tell me, these words which we used to hear and used to really like, ethics, values, morality, decency, do they even exist in today's world, sir?
No, they don't. I wrote a review on a book. We published this book review by a German author. I have right in front of me. He wrote a report about the US media, and he said, according to his book, there are 500 US journalists who directly work for the CIA. And he claimed that the New York Times and the other media organizations have agreement with the CIA that they can loaned, the word used, loaned their journalists as and when required. Coming back to the Indian obsession which Pakistan has, and India has Pakistani obsession. If you play with the weak team, you play with the enemy. That's the first thing. The second thing is that in India, there are 330 plus people every morning go outside their home, sit outside both sides of the railway track, and they do not have toilets. The BMI of an Indian body measurement index, a medical person will understand, is equal to a third world, very poor African country. And that is because of the waterborne diseases as a result of this defecation outside. These figures are very popular. Prime Minister Modi even started a campaign called Take Poo to the Loo. When Prime Minister Imran Khan mentioned about something about the toilets, people were criticizing him. It's very important that you provide a very clean environment to your children, to yourselves.
All right.
This is India we're talking about.
Sir, at the end of the day, I'm totally out of time, sir. Sir, I believe, there was this very interesting phenomena that we studied in the management classes, and that was about the SWOT analysis: the strengths, the weaknesses, opportunities, and the threats. You need to evaluate where you can play better. I think high time. It's now or never. We need to do that. Anyway, Thank you so much, Ambassador Jamil Khan Saab. Thank you so much, Dr. Shahid Qureshi, for your presence. Always a pleasure to have you, Janjua Saab. And that's all we have for this up. Time for news now. I'll see you later. Khuda Hafiz.